Well, the camera says it's rolling, so let's see what happens. Thank you for giving my video a chance. So I just bought a diesel heater roughly 2 months ago, and it's actually kind of hot in here right now because I've got it running because I want to demonstrate something to you. So I'm basically going to try to shoot an educational video about diesel heaters in case you're interested in getting one. And this is the one that I've set up so far. I'm trying not to waste too much of your time with useless information, so let's get started. Okay, to start with, these heaters really are not that complicated, but they do have a lot of systems inside of them. As a matter of fact, I've broken it down to 6 separate systems. So in order for you to operate one of these heaters successfully, you'll need some familiarity with 6 separate systems. And now the first and most important system is the exhaust system. Then we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. There's the fuel system. There's information there too that you need to know. There's a power system, not terribly complicated. There's a fan system that's really not very complicated unless something goes wrong. Then there's a control system. Now, in my situation, my control system's not that complicated, but before I knew how to do what I wanted to do, it was incredibly complicated. But once I figured out how to do what I needed to do, it turned out that it was pretty simple all along. And then finally, you have the burn chamber with the glow plugs, the combustion engine. So those are your 6 separate systems: exhaust, fuel, power, fan, control, burn chamber. Now I've got this camera set up in this particular way because I want to demonstrate something to you as to how hot these diesel heaters are. So I've got a pack of matches right here, and I'm gonna pull one of these matches out. The last time I did this, it took 1 second to ignite this match. So I'm going to take this match and I'm going to touch this joint, this 90-degree elbow in this pipe that I've already burnt it like 10 times doing this experiment. But here we go. 1, 2, 3, touching. Bam. And it just lit as soon as I touched it. So the exhaust pipes, they get pretty hot. And I'm only on setting 5. And this heater has 10 settings. So this heater actually has two categories of settings. If you want to, you can use the Celsius. You can set it up so that you can control it with Celsius, which I find, I'm an American, so that's kind of complicated for me. And it also gives you, it was either 20 or 30 separate settings. And I really didn't want to mess with that. Now the setting that it came with has a big P on it. I believe that stands for power, but the P setting that might stand for power only has 10 settings, and like that's really simple. So I like that one. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and right now it's on 5, except it's kind of hot and I've already done the burn thing, so I'm going to turn it down to 1. So the exhaust system, it gets really, really hot. It's dangerous, man. Like, I've seen it burn plastic tables. I have charred wood with it. Like, I blackened the wood. I didn't leave it there long enough for the wood to catch on fire. But I suspect if you were to, have prolonged contact with wood with a hot part of this exhaust pipe, you might could definitely start a fire there. So you got to watch out for that. Now, the other problem with the exhaust pipe is the exhaust gases flowing through the exhaust pipe. These gases are extremely toxic. It's more than likely the same thing coming out of a diesel truck. And I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to inhale the fumes coming out of the back of one of those things. So you got to be careful with the exhaust system. There's super hot pipes, toxic fumes, just a bad thing. Now, when I first set this thing up, I was trying to cheap it out, and I didn't get the fiberglass shield for the exhaust pipe because I was like, I'm going to make this heater really efficient and let that exhaust pipe radiate heat away from it. But after I burned myself 5 good times, I changed my mind about that, and I bought the fiberglass sleeve for the exhaust pipe so I could stop burning myself. So that's the other thing. Another problem with the exhaust pipe is water can get into the exhaust pipe. So here's the out port for the exhaust, and here's the import for the exhaust. It's just a small filter, not really, it only filters large things. It doesn't really filter small things. But whatever moisture gets into the intake vent for the combustion chamber, which is right here, whatever moisture gets in there is going to end up in this pipe. Now that could be not very much, or it could be a whole bunch depending on your situation. But one of the issues that you do need to take into consideration is that water could build up inside of this pipe. And see, the thing about it is people get these diesel heaters, and we want to get all inventive and creative, and we want to make this thing super efficient, because you do technically blow a lot of heat out of the exhaust pipe. And people they do things like sand batteries to capture the heat, or a bucket of water to capture the heat, or they have large, like the old-timey furnaces or radiators that would be on the wall that they pumped hot water through. You know, really, I mean, you could pump whatever you can attach whatever you can attach the exhaust pipe to, you know, you can attach it to. So, but you have to be careful. So the exhaust pipe's not magic. It has limits. And I'm not super sure about the exact limits, but essentially, the longer the exhaust pipe is, the more inefficient it becomes, whatever that means. Now, it's also recommended that you only have 3 90-degree turns in your exhaust pipe, because every 90-degree turn, it makes the pipe less efficient. It also makes it really easy to start to light matches at the 90-degree turn, because the heat slams dead into that 90-degree turn. Whereas on the straight pipe, you know, the heat can basically run past the pipe instead of running straight into it like it does at a 90-degree turn. Now, okay, so those are basically the issues. So you got water, you got heat, you got toxic fumes. Oh, now when you bend this pipe, like when you bend the pipe to where you want to put it, you might want to think about heating the pipe up first with a hair dryer or something, just in case it's a little chilly. You could warm it up a little bit, might make it easier to bend, protect it a little bit. Now the other thing is the parts and pieces. So these things come with a muffler or a silencer to keep them quiet. And then there's connectors and there's clamps, and like I've got a connector in the wall that I can hook the exhaust pipe to, and then it goes out of the house that way. There's the fiberglass sleeve. There's lots of things you can get. Now, if you try to get real creative, see, things start getting, the more creative you try to get, like the more complicated this scenario gets. And as long as you stick with 1-inch pipe and 1-inch clamps and 1-inch connectors, like you'll be good to go. It'll be real simple, because it's really hard to find stuff that fits, that's not basically perfectly designed for this thing. So that's the exhaust pipe, and I'm gonna hit the pause button for a second. Okay, we're back. So the second system that I've got wrote down is the fuel system. Now the fuel system's not really very complicated. I mean, me personally, I have a roughly 2-gallon tank, which works out perfect because this thing burns about 1 gallon of fuel a day. Like I've also installed this, I've got this black light back here. I'm gonna turn it off for a second. So there's the black light. And as you can see, if you look at the fuel's super green at the bottom, but if I turn it off, it kind of goes away. So I installed that black light just to make it easier for me to see the fuel, because there's a little slit in the very front of the device that you're supposed to look through, and it's hard to tell what the actual fuel level is, but you put that black light on there and it's real easy to tell. Now, now you want to do things. Now you want to make sure your fuel is clean because your fuel can be contaminated. And there's lots of interesting things you can do with the fuel line to make it convenient. I haven't actually gotten to the convenient thing. As you can see, there's a little 5-gallon kerosene container holding diesel because it's made out of the same plastic and I don't want to buy another can. But so you can get kind of creative with the fuel lines and you can simplify your life. I haven't done that yet. I'll probably do that next year, but we're going to skip that part. So the other thing, or the other aspect of the fuel system, is the fuel pump. Now the fuel pump's kind of important. If you buy a really cheap diesel heater, you will probably get a very loud fuel pump. Click, click, click. Now I'm going to be quiet for a second. I want you to listen. You can hear mine. Click. You can even see it too on the screen. At the very bottom of the, let's see, like right in this area right here, if you look right there, you can actually see it. So the fuel pump is weird. So you get magic bubbles from nowhere. So the fuel pump is sucking diesel off the bottom of that 2-gallon gas tank, and there's no air bubbles down there. But as that fuel passes through that fuel pump, air bubbles come out of it. Like at first it was like magic fairy bubbles. Like, where do air bubbles come from? But it turns out there's a phenomenon called cavitation. And that's where you change the pressure of the liquid, and then the liquid turns into a gas and you get air bubbles out of liquid. So it's kind of amazing. Now my fuel pump is horizontal. It's laying flat. That's the way it came. Now, if you're going to install a fuel pump somewhere, it's supposed to be at a diagonal, at a 45-degree angle, so those air bubbles can easily escape the fuel pump. But that's not the situation I'm in. But if you're ever in that situation where you're mounting one on the wall, if you mount it at a 45-degree angle so those air bubbles can naturally escape the fuel pump, it may prolong the life of your fuel pump. So the other thing is the fuel pump, as it pulsates, do. Now it can also move. So there's 2 different types of fuel lines. If you decide to do some creative fuel line setup so that you don't have to put a gallon of fuel in your heater every day like I do, and you just want to hook it up to a 5-gallon tank, you'll need to know a little bit about fuel lines, because there's 2 types of fuel lines. You've got soft, rubbery fuel lines, and you have hard, stiff fuel lines. And now the thing about the hard, stiff fuel lines is any movement generated by the fuel pump will be transmitted through those hard, stiff lines, and they could eventually, your connectors could rattle loose over time. But the soft, rubbery hoses, any sort of impact into those, and the rubber just sort of absorbs it and it doesn't spread it down the line. So you'll see some setups where people use hard rubber. Now they use hard plastic lines, but they'll have 2 short, soft rubber lines attached to the actual fuel pump. Like they'll put a 2-inch piece of rubber on the back side and a 2-inch piece of rubber on the front side, and then they'll attach those cheap hard lines to that. That way they get the benefits of both worlds. They get the cheap hard lines, and they get the shock absorption of the soft rubbery lines. Okay, so I believe that's about it. We'll take a small break for a second. Alrighty, well, we're back after a short break. So the next system is the power system. So one of the things I noticed about the cheap diesel heaters, they were all 12-volt systems. And I really wasn't quite prepared to get into battery world just yet with this thing. So I wanted something that would plug in the wall. So I actually found, let's see here, I hope I don't miss, I found the Wisp Pro. And I've taken the frame off for a reason too. But since I just showed you the Wisp Pro, the reason I took the housing off of this, the first reason was so I could get inside of it and work. The second reason, I noticed there was a lot of heat building up inside of the heater itself. So I figured, like, why keep the housing on there? See, I've got this soft rubber hose there, and it is like 1.25 inches away from a super hot exhaust pipe, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But that's the fact. But that's the facts on the ground. So I've been trying to do things to keep that fuel line cool so it doesn't suffer heat fatigue. And now some of the things I've done, I've got some spark plug covers. My first experience with the fiberglass sleeves was spark plug covers. So I stuck one on the fuel line itself to protect it. And then I stuck another one on the exhaust pipe as well to kind of prevent heat from escaping from the exhaust pipe in that location. And as you can see down here in this corner, I've even put a fan here too. So like when I'm running this thing for long periods of time, all winter long, I've got plenty of open space for the heat to escape. And I have a fan too. So I can blow cool air into the internal components of the heater. And I can keep the fuel line cool. I can keep the fuel pump cool. I can keep all the electrical systems down here in the bottom cool. So we added a little $10 fan. But we're supposed to be talking about the power system. But we jumped back on the exhaust and gas systems. So the heater I bought, I'm not sure where my little piece of paper is, but my diesel heater it can be used as a 12-volt system. It can be used as a 24-volt system, which is what's being used right now, or you can plug it in the wall. So they gave me an adapter that plugs in the wall, and you can see it. It's back here. I'm not using it right now because I've got a battery. But that adapter, what it does is it transforms 110 into 12 volts. So if you plug this thing into the wall, it's going to operate on a 12-volt system. And it's actually but I've got it on a 24-volt battery because I just started doing some solar power stuff. You know how that goes, right? I was nervous because I couldn't figure out how to change the settings in the control pad to switch over to 12 volts. So I just didn't do it, and it turned out just fine. So the control system it can measure the voltage going through, and I've actually got 20. Let me see here. Let me see. Push that button. So I've got 27.2 volts going through the system. So my system can read the voltage, and it's been running for about a week now. So I guess everything's fine. So I didn't have to make any adjustments to the voltage to switch over from 12 volt to 24. The machine did it for me. So that was really convenient. And there's, the 110 thing, it just plugs into the back like any other. I mean, it looks like a box for a tablet or a laptop. But if you're going to use a battery like I'm doing now, you can see the black lug right there. That's the black lug. The red lug is a little further back. And it comes with wire that you can just, I had to put some battery terminals on one end of the wire. It came with terminals for this end of the wire, but it left my options open for terminals for the other end. But I've got an eco-worthy, let's see here. I don't know. I'm going to try to shake the camera a little bit with I've got this eco-worthy battery down. I don't want to move this too much because, my camera studio it's like not very good. But that's about it. Electricity is pretty simple. I mean, you plug it in the wall, it works. You plug it to a 12-volt battery, it works. You plug it to a 24-volt battery, it works. You don't have to make any adjustments in the control for it. At least in the model that I have, it works just fine. So the power was very simple. Okay, the next system are the fan systems. I really have absolutely no control over the fan system other than the fact that I can turn them up and I can turn them down. I haven't actually cracked open this shell. Some people will crack this thing open, but I didn't feel like doing that. But I can tell you that it has two fans. It's got one fan that sucks air in the back, and it blows it through this black chamber across the burn barrel that's inside of it, and then it blows the hot air out of this tube here. So that's one fan. Then there's another fan. I suspect it's inside of the burn chamber because it sucks air in for the intake exhaust and it blows air out for the outtake exhaust. So I'm pretty sure there's 2 fans in there, one for clean air and one for toxic air. But I don't know exactly. I've seen some pictures. I think there's just one motor spinning both fans. And now as you turn the heater up, you know, the speed of the fan goes up. As you turn it down, the speed of the fan slows down. So it's really simple. There's really not much to know about the fan system other than it is there. Okay, the control system, that would be our next system. Now I didn't know, like, mine's a new control system, and I looked on YouTube for people telling me about stuff, and like I really couldn't find one that looked exactly like the one I had. But mine actually turned out to be really simple. Like, I really did not have to change anything. You know, it came set where I could turn it on, I could turn it up, I could turn it down. I didn't have to change the voltage. I just plugged in whatever I was going to power it with, and it just worked out fine. But you can set the time on there. You can set timers. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. This ain't the cheapest diesel heater that you can get. I believe this was like $189 is what I paid for this one, I believe, somewhere around that. So it's kind of like, you know, it's better than the cheapest. My fuel pump's not that loud, and everything's been really convenient so far. Now, you may notice these straps here. So I told you I took the housing off because I wanted the heat to escape, but you take the housing off and then the rest of the housing becomes really unstable and not very strong. So we stuck these pipe straps everywhere to kind of lock it together. And, you know, like, one reason why I did that is, you know, these things are designed for like people who want to go hunting for the weekend. So they're going to run it hot for Friday and Saturday and Sunday. But I'm running this thing in my house, right? So I'm running this thing every day when it's cold. So I'm trying to do everything I can do to not overwhelm the device. That's why we've removed the housing so all the air can escape. I've got a fan to blow cool air in. Matter of fact, let me turn that thing on. Maybe, I really don't want to because it makes noise. How hot is that? I've turned it down. It's not too hot. That's not too loud. But that's basic. That's the control system. Mine was really simple, which was really good because they didn't give me any instructions on how to operate the control system. So maybe if you buy one of these and they don't have any instructions. Oh, another thing, if you get a Whisk Pro, right, and you find this black rubber washer underneath the fuel cap, it goes in the housing right here. Like, it wasn't installed in the housing when I got it. And I saw another YouTuber, he couldn't figure out what to do with it. And I finally figured it out. It fits into the housing if you use it, which I'm not even using. But I figured it out. Okay, and those are the basic systems right there. And then there's the main system. You've got the burn chamber itself, which has a glow plug in it. And that's basically where all of these systems converge, and like where they all converge at the same point. And you get that wonderful heat that you're looking for. So the burn chamber. So you've got a fan pumping air into the burn chamber. That's the air for the burn. You've got a diesel fuel pump pumping fuel into the burn chamber as well. And there's a glow plug, like a diesel glow plug for a truck or Mercedes or something. So there's actually a diesel glow plug inside of it. So it's got air blowing, a red hot glowing glow plug, and then it sprays diesel on it and it combusts, and it creates a little tornado inside of an aluminum shell that has lots of heat fins coming off of it all the way around it. And then the secondary fan blows air, sucks air from the back and blows it over the heat fans and pushes out the hot air. And this thing works pretty good too, man. I have had no complaints. I'm kind of poor or whatever, and I've always used electric heat, and I've used kerosene. But kerosene is now like $10 a gallon where I live, if you can get it. Where diesel is like $3.50 in Georgia, maybe a little higher. But the diesel was really cheap. It's got a lot of control. Like, this thing works good. Like, you don't really need to know much about the burn chamber because, like, you're not going to mess with it unless it breaks. So overall, this thing's really simple. I mean, I've got no complaints. Now, I set it up 3 separate ways. Like first I set it up in one way and I was like, wow, that's really terrible. And then I set it up another way and I was like, wow, this is terrible too. So finally, I just bought one of these metal shelves. I like the metal because the exhaust pipe gets hot enough to set matches on fire with less than a second or two. And you know, the only plastic in these metal shelves are these little sleeves in the actual the upright poles. There's a little sleeve there, so that's the only plastic. And as long as your exhaust pipe is away from that, you know, and I've even got the exhaust pipe hanging. I've used more of these metal straps to have it hanging down because I don't want the exhaust pipe close to the heater. You know, I don't want the heater getting hot, which sounds kind of weird, but I really don't. I don't want the bottom of the heater getting hot. I've also got a fuel can sitting up here too. And I'm sort of limited to the siphon. I know it's terrible. It sucks. That's what I'm doing though these days. Now, as I said, you can set up other fuel systems that are way more convenient than the one I've got. But you know, I started off this year. I was gonna get real complicated and do a sand battery and do this and that, and I've seen all sorts of strange things you could do. But I was running out of time, and I was getting sick of not being able to find what I was looking for. So I just said, screw it, and let's set this thing up the simplest way possible so we can just get it running and I can start to get some of my money back. Like I actually think I've spent $400 roughly on this diesel heater. The diesel heater was like $189 plus tax. That's $210 or something. You know, it's like $75 for a shelf, and you know, I bought 2 of these pipes because just in case I screwed the first one up, and some other accessories and this piece and that piece and clamps and like, oh yeah, so I got some. Now, when I connected my exhaust to the bottom, like I used a heavy duty clamp. Now these clamps that they give you with these exhaust pipes, like they suck. I mean, it doesn't take very long to jump track or to jump the threads. So these cheap ass things, I mean, they just suck. So I got like a $5 one. It's big and it's like big gnarly and it works great. Now I made another modification of this thing too. See, when I first figured out how 90-degree turns generate lots of heat, see, I bought this WisPro because the exhaust pipe didn't come straight down. It came out the side. And I thought I was doing something. It's like, yeah, I'll get one out the side. That'll be great. I won't have to go through the bottom of the shelf. But it got here, and that piece is around somewhere. Like they basically just had a 90-degree elbow stuck to the bottom of this thing. And it was loose. Like they had hit it with 2 hot probes and bent it in. So it was a struggle to get it off. And I even scratched the aluminum housing that it was attached to, but I couldn't make a good seal on it. And there was a 90-degree elbow right there, which meant it would have gotten super hot right inside of that heater. And like, I really don't want it getting super hot right here. I really don't. That's why I've got the pipe running straight down. So if you do get a heater with the pipe coming out the side, just know that the exhaust is more than likely going straight down, and then it's just hitting an elbow. And then there's going to be an enormous amount of heat inside of that elbow, which could cook your fuel lines, could cook your electronics, you know, unless you're just using it for like 2 days to go camping or something. Then it's probably fine. But if you're using it like I'm using it long term, all winter long, then yeah, that's probably would cause some heat fatigue for all winter. But you know, I think that's about it, man. You know, there's a lot of things you can do with these. You know, we've talked about the water that could technically build up in the exhaust, the heat from the exhaust, the toxic fumes from the exhaust. If you do any exhaust work you do, if you stick with 1-inch connectors, it'll be real easy for you to find what you're looking for. Fiberglass sleeves will protect you from burns and protect your fuel lines from heat fatigue. Okay, that's about it. You know, fuel, you can modify the fuel and make it more convenient for you. There's going to be bubbles coming out of the fuel pump, cavitation. Electricity's pretty easy, 12 on mine anyways, 12 volt, 24 volt, power adapter, whatever I put to it, it recognizes it and it makes whatever adjustments it needs to make, if it needs to make any at all. I don't know. Airflow is pretty good. 2 fans, clean air, dirty air. Now I think that's about it, man. That's about the basics. Now, you can get deeper into these things, right? You really could, but I think that's about as deep as I've got, and that's about as deep as I need to get. And like, it's kind of hot in my house right now, and it's what is today? It's like December 8th or something. I'm not sure. But thank you very much. If you watched my video, I appreciate it. Let me see. Since we're at the end, let's see, I'll move the camera around. So here's the front. Now you can see how that light, that black light right there, I'll turn it off. Like, you can see the fuel line, but you can really see it now. This, the Wisp Pro, I've got the eco-worthy battery. I bought some solar panels and stuff, and there's your fuel tank. I've got a 5-gallon tank there. I got a 5-gallon tank there. Got a 5-gallon tank there. Since we're talking about tanks, let's talk about tanks for a second. So I was curious, can you put gasoline can you put diesel in a kerosene can? That's the thing that crossed my mind. Like, so I've got a kerosene can here, but I got diesel in it. I got a diesel can here. I bought it brand new. It was like 24 bucks and had a filter in there that I had to rip out so I could stick my siphon in there. This handle it works, but it sucks. I've got an old kerosene can here. Now, it turns out, so all 3 of these cans are made from the same plastic. HDPE, high density polyethylene. Like, as far as I can tell, the only difference in this yellow can and that blue can, now the blue can says it's for kerosene, the yellow says it's for diesel. As far as I can tell, the only difference between those cans is the color. Like, they're made out of the same plastic. It's the same thing with this one. They're all made out of the same plastic. And like, I found one spot online where the computer told me that they might put an additive into the coloring to help with different fuels, right? So I got no difference in any of these cans as far as the material that they're made of. Like, they're all made out of HDPE, high density polyethylene. Now, the coloring is important, right? See, for me, it's not important because I don't want to buy a bunch of cans and I've got the same fuel in all these cans and I know it's diesel and it's not a big deal. But now the coloring's important for confusion purposes. Kerosene cans are blue, so you can easily recognize that it's kerosene. Diesel cans are yellow, so you can easily recognize it's diesel. And gas cans are red, so you can easily recognize it's a gas can. But as far as the difference in the materials, I can't find a difference in the materials. And I don't think the internet wants me to do that. I think the internet would rather I buy a bunch of gas cans and a bunch of diesel cans and a bunch of carrots. I think they'd rather sell me as many cans as they could, to be honest with you. But having different color cans is really convenient for keeping track of different types of fuel. But I don't have different types of fuel. I have one type of fuel, and it is diesel, and I'm using a kerosene can. I don't regret it yet. I'm using a diesel can. I mean, I kind of regret this thing. It kind of sucks, actually, but it works. I bought it, so I'm going to use it. So that's the other thing. Now there's a company out there. I'm not going to say their name, but they make HDPE containers for like racetrack situations. And they're not allowed to advertise their cans as fuel cans because they don't have FCC approval. And they don't want FCC approval. They want the fastest cans they can get for racetrack stuff. Now they told me they couldn't sell me any of their cans as a fuel can, but they also told me that gasoline will not damage their cans. And diesel will not damage their cans, and kerosene will not damage their cans. Like I was told by the factory that those substances will not damage their containers, but they can't sell those containers to me for that purpose because they don't have approval, and they don't want approval either, because they want to sell the cans they want to sell to do what they're trying to do. And you might, if you go looking into cans, you might find out what I'm talking about. But anyways, so I'm not going to tell you to put diesel in a kerosene, but I did it, and I don't care. I don't know of any difference between these cans other than the color of the plastic. Okay, so that's it. This is like a 35-minute video. I hope I didn't drive you too crazy, and you take care and have a good night. I'm tired.